I didn't know they let ghetto trash into Oakmont now, Wendy announced, her voice echoing off marble columns. I guess they'll take anyone these days if it helps their diversity numbers. A lone tray clattered to the floor, silencing Oakmont Academy's grand cafeteria. All eyes turned to the center, where Wendy Carter stood over Janessa Turner, the dark-skinned scholarship student, now covered in milk and cafeteria spaghetti. Wendy's designer shoes deliberately crushed Janessa's scattered notes as cell phones rose in unison to capture the moment. Janessa's fingers trembled, pasta sauce dripping down her face as she clutched her worn backpack where her third-degree black belt remained hidden. 50 privileged students formed a perfect circle around them, their expensive uniforms creating a wall of wealth and privilege that trapped Janessa in the center. "What's wrong? Can't speak English properly?" Wendy continued, flicking more food toward Janessa with manicured nails. "Or did they just let you in because your kind is good at sports? Certainly wasn't for your brains." The sauce burned Janessa's eyes as she knelt to gather her ruined notes. Her jaw tightened while her sensei's words pounded in her head. True power lies in knowing when not to strike. Her hands instinctively shifted into a defensive position before she forced them to relax. Wendy leaned down, her blonde hair swinging forward as she whispered, "People like you don't belong here. Go back to whatever government housing project you crawled out of." Cruel laughter erupted as Janessa slowly stood, food dripping from her uniform. For just a moment, something dangerous flickered in her eyes, a glimpse of power so controlled that even Wendy took an unconscious step backward. 312 days, Janessa thought, counting down to scholarship review. "Just keep the scholarship. It's your only way out." The smell of expensive perfume mixed with tomato sauce and humiliation as Janessa walked away. Spine straight, steps measured, each footprint marked by sauce on the polished floor. The outline of her black belt pressed visibly against her backpack, a promise that this story was far from over. Janessa unlocked the door to apartment 3B and stepped inside. The smell of lemon cleaner and herbal tea told her Grandma Rose was home between shifts. Their small two-bedroom apartment in Southside felt like another universe compared to Oakmont Academy's sprawling campus and manicured lawns. The living room doubled as Janessa's bedroom at night, with a pull-out couch that left barely enough floor space for her morning stretches. "That you, baby?" Grandma Rose called from the kitchen, her voice thick with exhaustion. Janessa could hear the familiar squeak of her nurse's shoes against the linoleum. "Yeah, it's me," Janessa answered, dropping her backpack by the door. She didn't mention the ruined notes or Wendy's words. Grandma worked double shifts at Madison Hospital to pay for what the scholarship didn't cover. The last thing she needed was another worry. Grandma Rose appeared in the doorway, still in her scrubs, gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. The lines around her eyes had deepened since Dad died 3 years ago. "How was school?" she asked, studying Janessa's face with the practiced eye of someone who had raised her since she was 7. "Fine, just tired," Janessa lied, forcing a smile. "Mrs. Clark says I have a shot at valedictorian if I keep my grades up." Pride pushed aside some of the fatigue in Grandma Rose's eyes. "Your daddy would be so proud." She squeezed Janessa's shoulder. "I'm heading back for the night shift. There's chicken and rice in the fridge. Don't stay up too late studying." After Grandma left, Janessa pushed the coffee table against the wall and rolled out the worn mat her father had given her for her 10th birthday. The familiar texture beneath her bare feet centered her instantly. She closed her eyes, letting the day's humiliation fuel her rather than consume her. She began with breathing exercises, then moved through basic forms, her movements precise and controlled. As she transitioned into more advanced techniques, her body flowed with a grace and power that would have stunned her classmates into silence. Each kick, each strike, each perfectly balanced stance told the story of thousands of hours of discipline and training. The memory of her father came unbidden, his gentle voice guiding her through her first Poomsae forms at the community center after school. "Channel it, Janessa," he'd said after she'd come home crying about the kids who mocked her second-hand clothes. Turn pain into power. After he died, a sudden heart attack at 41, no insurance, Grandma Rose had somehow found the money for Janessa to continue training. It keeps his spirit alive, she'd said, and keeps that fire in you burning right. Now, in the cramped living room, Janessa executed a perfect flying kick, her body suspended in air for a moment of pure freedom before landing in perfect silence. At the community dojang, her sensei, Master Price, had recently told her she was ready for the national championship, a competition that could lead to college scholarships if she placed in the top 3. The thought of college, of escape, made her chest tighten with longing. But the registration fee alone was $2,000. Money they simply didn't have. Her phone buzzed with a notification. Janessa picked it up, her heart sinking as she saw a new social media post from Wendy. A surreptitiously taken photo of Janessa gathering her ruined notes. The caption read, "Charity case having a bad day. Maybe she'll go back where she belongs." That scholarship, charity, diversity hire. The comments were already piling up, each one a fresh cut. Janessa threw the phone on the couch and returned to her mat, channeling the anger into a sequence of movements so powerful the neighbors downstairs would later swear they could feel the building shake. Morning came too quickly. Janessa folded her mat away and transformed the living room back to its normal state before getting ready for another day at Oakmont. On the bus ride to school, she received an email that made her heart race. National Taekwondo Championship registration deadline, 2 weeks. Last year's second-place winner. We hope to see you compete again. Please confirm your entry and submit the $2,000 registration fee by the deadline. Janessa stared at her phone, the amount glowing like an accusation. Grandma Rose's words from last night echoed in her mind. Your daddy would be so proud. She couldn't ask for money. They didn't have it. But without that championship, her chances of a full college scholarship would evaporate like morning dew under the harsh sun of reality. The bus pulled up to Oakmont's imposing gates, and Janessa steeled herself for another day of navigating hostile territory, the weight of 2 worlds pressing down on her shoulders. The next week at Oakmont unfolded like a carefully orchestrated campaign of isolation. Janessa approached the chemistry study group that had formed in the library, textbook in hand. "Sorry, we're full," said Tyler, Wendy's boyfriend, and the captain of the lacrosse team. "The table has 3 empty chairs." Aintree. "Mr. Price here said we should work in groups of 5, and you only have—" "We said we're full," Wendy cut in, not bothering to look up from her phone. "Besides, we're discussing the charity showcase next month. My parents are the main sponsors, and the winner gets a $2,500 prize. Not that you'd have any talents worth showcasing." Janessa's mind immediately calculated. $2,500. More than enough for the championship registration and travel expenses. She lingered a moment too long, and Wendy finally looked up. "What? You think you have a shot?" Wendy laughed, the sound drawing attention from nearby tables. "The showcase is for actual skills, not basketball or whatever you people do." Janessa walked away, her face burning, but her mind racing. The annual Oakmont Charity Showcase was legendary. Wealthy parents and alumni attended, checkbooks open. Past winners had gone on to prestigious summer programs and internships. The $2,500 prize was almost an afterthought for most participants. But for Janessa, it represented everything. After school, she sought out her guidance counselor, Miss Barnes, to report the ongoing harassment. The older woman listened with a placid smile that never reached her eyes. "Wendy Carter's family has donated the east wing of our library," Miss Barnes finally said, straightening papers on her desk. "Perhaps you should try harder to fit in. Oakmont has a certain culture. We took a chance on you with this scholarship. Don't make us regret it." The implied threat hung in the air between them. Janessa left the office understanding perfectly. There would be no help from the administration. The following day in chemistry lab, Janessa carefully measured chemicals for their group project, one she'd done most of the work on. As she turned to retrieve a beaker, Wendy's elbow accidentally knocked over the solution, spilling it across Janessa's portion of the lab report. The acrid smell of chemicals burned her nostrils as the liquid seeped through pages of meticulous notes. "Miss Turner," Mr. Pricier barked from across the room. "Control your materials. That's a 0 for today's lab." "But Janessa began. "I saw what happened. One more word, and it's detention." "Some students," he said pointedly, "should be grateful for the opportunities they've been given." Wendy didn't bother hiding her smirk. The message was clear. The rules were different for Janessa. That afternoon at the community center, Dojang, Janessa attacked the practice dummy with controlled fury, each strike precise but carrying the weight of her day. Master Price observed from the doorway, his weathered face giving nothing away. After she finished, sweat dampening her uniform, he approached. "Your technique is perfect," he said, "but your spirit is troubled. Remember, Taekwondo is not about revenge. It is about harmony between mind and body." "They're never going to accept me," Janessa said, her voice barely above a whisper. "No matter how perfect my grades are, no matter how polite I am, they've already decided what I am." Master Price's eyes softened. "Then perhaps it is time to show them who you truly are. The championship is coming. You are ready. The registration fee." "There are always ways for those with determination," he said. "Trust your path." The next day, Janessa stayed late at school to use the library. As she passed the empty gymnasium, she noticed the door was ajar. Inside, she heard the rhythmic sound of someone practicing alone. Curiosity drew her in. Miss Porter, the PE teacher, was executing a series of basketball drills with machine-like precision. Janessa watched from the doorway, impressed by the older woman's focus and skill. "You going to stand there all day or come in?" Miss Porter called without breaking her routine. Embarrassed, Janessa entered. "Sorry, I didn't mean to intrude." Miss Porter sank one final basket before turning to face her. "You're the scholarship student, Turner, right?" Janessa nodded, preparing for the usual judgment. "I've seen you in gym class. You move differently than the others, like you've had training." For a moment, Janessa considered denying it, keeping her secret safe. But something in Miss Porter's direct gaze made her reconsider. "Taekwondo," she admitted. "I'm a 3rd-degree black belt." Miss Porter's eyebrows rose slightly. "Impressive. So why do you let Wendy Carter walk all over you?" The bluntness of the question caught Janessa off guard. "My scholarship is based on academic merit, not how well you take abuse," Janessa said quietly. Porter bounced the basketball thoughtfully. "You know, when I was playing in the WNBA, people told me I didn't belong there either. Too short, too loud, too black." She fixed Janessa with a steady look. "You ever consider entering the showcase? That martial arts stuff would certainly stand out." The idea had been forming in Janessa's mind since Wendy mentioned the prize, but hearing it suggested aloud made it suddenly real and terrifying. "They'd never let me win," Janessa said quietly. "Maybe not," Miss Porter agreed. "But sometimes it's not about winning, it's about being seen." The conversation stayed with Janessa as she walked home, the possibility taking root. If she entered the showcase and performed well enough, even if politics prevented her from winning, perhaps a video of her performance could help secure sponsorship for the championship. But just as this seed of hope began to grow, her phone exploded with notifications. Wendy and her friends had created a fake social media profile using Janessa's photo. The profile was filled with posts written in exaggerated slang, reinforcing every stereotype about low-income black students. Already half the school had seen it. Comments piled up with crying, laughing emojis. Janessa's hands shook as she reported the fake account, knowing it would do no good. The damage was already done. For the first time since arriving at Oakmont, she let herself cry. Not from sadness, but from pure incandescent rage. In that moment, her decision was made. She would enter the showcase. She would show them exactly who Janessa Turner was, and they would never forget it. The girls' locker room was empty after school hours, or should have been. Janessa, avoiding the usual after-school crowd, had waited until the building was nearly deserted before retrieving her gym clothes. As she rounded the corner to her locker, hushed, panicked voices stopped her short. "I can't do it, Amelia. I've been practicing for weeks, and I still can't get it right." Wendy's voice, stripped of its usual arrogance, sounded brittle with fear. "The showcase is in 3 weeks, Wit. Your parents are expecting you to win, especially since they're sponsoring it." Amelia, Wendy's loyal second-in-command, sounded exasperated. "Don't you think I know that?" Wendy hissed. "If I don't win, my father will cut my allowance. And if anyone finds out I copied the routine from that viral video," Janessa pressed herself against the wall, barely breathing. "No one will know," Amelia reassured her. "Just keep practicing. Your parents practically own this school. The judges won't dare give first place to anyone else." Their voices faded as they moved toward the exit. Janessa remained frozen, processing what she'd overheard. Wendy, for all her bravado, was a fraud, and terrified of being exposed. That night, Janessa sat at their small kitchen table, the showcase entry form glowing on her laptop screen. Her finger hovered over the submit button. If she entered, she risked everything. Her scholarship, her invisibility, perhaps even her future. But the $2,500 prize could change everything, opening the door to the national championship and potential college scholarships beyond. She thought of Wendy's panic in the locker room, of Miss Porter's challenge, of Master Price's belief in her abilities. Taking a deep breath, she typed J. Turner into the name field, anonymous enough that Wendy wouldn't recognize it until the actual performance, and clicked Submit. The confirmation page loaded. "Thank you for your entry. Performance slot number 14. She'd done it. There was no turning back now. The next morning, Grandma Rose's coughing woke Janessa before dawn. She found her grandmother sitting on the edge of her bed, struggling to catch her breath. "It's nothing," Grandma insisted, waving away Janessa's concern. "Just a cold." But the coughing persisted through breakfast, and Janessa noticed the unnatural flush on her grandmother's cheeks. "You need to see a doctor," she insisted. "Can't miss my shift," Grandma Rose wheezed. "Bill's due next week." After much arguing, Janessa convinced her to go to urgent care, accompanying her before school. The diagnosis: pneumonia. The doctor prescribed antibiotics and strict bed rest for at least a week. "Who's going to cover your shifts?" Janessa asked on the bus ride home, mental calculations already running. "Without Grandma's income, even for a week." "Don't you worry about that," Grandma Rose said firmly, though her voice was weak. "You focus on school. I didn't sacrifice everything to get you into Oakmont just to have you distracted by adult problems." But they were Janessa's problems, too. That night, after making sure Grandma took her medicine and was resting, she checked their bank account on the shared laptop. The balance made her stomach clench. $2,437. Not enough for rent, let alone utilities and food for the month. As if the universe was conspiring against her, an email from Oakmont Academy appeared in her inbox. Scholarship student mid-year review meeting scheduled with Headmaster Wilson, the 15th of April. The 15th of April, the day after the showcase. The email went on to explain that her academic performance and character assessment would determine her scholarship status for the following year. Janessa stared at the screen, understanding the subtext perfectly. This was no routine review. This was a response to her showcase entry. The next 2 weeks became a blur of impossible balancing acts. Janessa woke at 4:30 in the morning to practice her taekwondo routine in the pre-dawn darkness of their small living room, careful not to wake her recovering grandmother. She attended classes at Oakmont, keeping her head down as Wendy's harassment intensified. Somehow, Wendy seemed to sense that something had changed, though she couldn't identify what. During lunch periods, Janessa slipped into empty classrooms to practice, using the reflection in windows to check her form. After school, she rushed home to care for Grandma Rose, prepare meals, and handle household chores. Once her grandmother was asleep, she would practice again, sometimes until midnight, before finally tackling her homework to maintain her perfect GPA. Sleep became a luxury she couldn't afford. Dark circles formed under her eyes, but her movements grew sharper, more precise, as if the pressure was distilling her into her purest form. Master Price allowed her extra practice time at the dojang on weekends, watching her routine evolve with quiet approval. "You've created something unique," he told her after a particularly intense session. "Not just taekwondo, but something that tells your story." "Will it be enough?" Janessa asked, wiping sweat from her brow. Master Price considered this. "For the judges, perhaps not, but for you," he smiled slightly, "I think it already is." With 1 week until the showcase, the mysterious Jay Turner had become a topic of speculation among Oakmont students. The program listed only names and performance types, and next to number 14 was simply martial arts demonstration. "Probably that weird kid from the chess club," Janessa overheard Wendy telling her friends. "As if anyone cares about karate or whatever. My contemporary dance routine is going to blow everyone away." Janessa said nothing, continuing her silent countdown. 6 days. 5. 4. With 3 days remaining, Grandma Rose's health improved enough for her to return to work, though Janessa insisted she take shorter shifts. The financial pressure eased slightly, but the upcoming scholarship review loomed like a storm on the horizon. 2 days before the showcase, Janessa stayed late at school to use the empty gym for one final full-scale practice. As she executed a particularly difficult sequence, a noise at the door made her falter. "Miss?" Porter stood watching, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "So this is what you've been working on," she said, walking into the gym. "I wondered who Jay Turner was." Janessa froze, heart pounding. "Are you going to tell anyone?" Miss Porter snorted. "And miss seeing the look on Wendy's face when you walk out on that stage? Not a chance." She studied Janessa with professional assessment. "Your technique is flawless, but you look like you're about to pass out from exhaustion. When was the last time you slept?" The concern in her voice nearly undid Janessa. "I'm fine," she insisted. "No, you're not, but you will be." Miss Porter tossed her a set of keys. "Gym office has a couch. Take a 20-minute power nap, then I'll drive you home. You're no good to anyone if you collapse before the showcase." For the first time in weeks, Janessa allowed herself to accept help. As she drifted into a brief, deep sleep on the office couch, her father's voice seemed to whisper in her ear. "You've got this, Jazz. Show them who you really are." The day before the showcase arrived with a sense of inevitability. Janessa stood in Master Price's dojang after hours, performing her routine one final time under his critical eye. She had combined traditional pumse forms with more dynamic breaking techniques and acrobatic movements, a routine that showcased both technical mastery and personal expression. When she finished, breathing hard but controlled, Master Price nodded slowly. "You have created something powerful," he said. "But remember why you are doing this." "For the prize money," Janessa answered automatically. "For the championship." Master Price shook his head. "That is what you need from it, not why you do it." He placed a weathered hand on her shoulder. "Tomorrow, when you stand on that stage, forget the judges. Forget Wendy Carter. Forget even the money. Perform for your father's memory. Perform for yourself. That is the only way to find true victory." Janessa bowed deeply. "Thank you, Master Price. Your father would be proud," he added quietly. "Not just of your skill, but of your heart." The words stayed with her as she walked home, the evening air cool against her skin. When she arrived at the apartment, she found Grandma Rose sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by unpaid bills, and looking more defeated than Janessa had ever seen her. "What's wrong?" Janessa asked, dropping her gym bag. Grandma Rose looked up quickly, trying to hide her distress. "Nothing for you to worry about, baby." "Grandma," Janessa said firmly, sitting across from her. "I'm not a child anymore, tell me." After a moment's hesitation, Grandma Rose sighed. "The hospital sent over my medical bills from last week. Insurance didn't cover all of it." She pushed a statement across the table. The amount due made Janessa's stomach drop. $1,800. "I can pick up extra shifts next month," Grandma continued. "But the rent is due next week, and with the electric bill, the weight of adult responsibilities pressed down on Janessa's shoulders. Even if she won the showcase, the prize money would barely cover their immediate needs, leaving nothing for the championship registration. For a moment, she considered withdrawing from the showcase altogether and looking for part-time work instead. "I have something to tell you," Janessa said slowly. "I entered the Oakmont Charity Showcase tomorrow night. First prize is $2,500. Grandma Rose's eyes widened. "The taekwondo? In front of all those people?" When Janessa nodded, she asked, "What about your scholarship? You've been so careful to keep a low profile." "Maybe too careful," Janessa replied. "I have a review meeting with the headmaster the day after the showcase. I think they're looking for a reason to revoke my scholarship." The kitchen fell silent as the full stakes became clear. If Janessa lost her scholarship, all of Grandma Rose's sacrifices would be for nothing. "Your daddy never backed down from a challenge," Grandma Rose finally said, reaching across the table to take Janessa's hand. "And neither should you. Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll face it together." The next morning dawned bright and clear. Janessa carefully packed her Dobok uniform and belt into her backpack along with a water bottle and the thin gold chain that had belonged to her father. At school, an excited buzz filled the hallways as students discussed the evening showcase. During lunch, Janessa overheard Wendy in the cafeteria holding court with her usual entourage. "I heard this Jay Turner signed up last minute," Wendy was saying. "Probably some desperate freshman trying to make a name for themselves. As if anyone could beat my routine. I've been working with a professional choreographer all semester." Janessa kept her head down, focusing on her textbook instead of her untouched lunch. The nervous energy coursing through her body had eliminated her appetite. As she was leaving the cafeteria, Amelia and two other girls from Wendy's circle deliberately bumped into her, causing Janessa to stumble. Her backpack fell, spilling its contents across the floor. "Oops," Amelia said with false concern. "So clumsy of me." Janessa scrambled to gather her belongings as students walked past, some deliberately stepping on her papers. When she reached for her water bottle, she found it had opened, soaking part of her uniform. The white Dobok fabric now had a spreading stain. "What's this?" Amelia asked, picking up Janessa's belt before she could grab it. "Some kind of costume? Are you in the showcase?" "Give it back," Janessa said quietly, standing up. Something in her tone made Amelia hesitate. She dropped the belt with a nervous laugh. "Whatever. It's probably for some weird cultural thing." Janessa checked her father's gold chain, thankfully still safe in an interior pocket, and assessed the damage to her uniform. The water stain was noticeable, but it would eventually dry. The real question was whether it would dry in time. During her free period, she slipped into the empty girls' bathroom and used the hand dryer to blow hot air on the damp fabric. The noise attracted unwanted attention when Miss Barnes, the guidance counselor, entered. "Miss Turner, what exactly are you doing?" Janessa quickly stuffed the uniform back into her bag. "Just drying something that got wet, ma'am." Miss Barnes's eyes narrowed. "I understand you've entered the showcase tonight, so they were monitoring her." "Yes, ma'am. I hope you understand the sensitivity of your position here at Oakmont. The showcase is a tradition for our legacy families. It would be unfortunate if anything disrupted that tradition. The threat was thinly veiled, but Janessa met her gaze steadily. "I'm just there to perform, ma'am, like everyone else." After Miss Barnes left, Janessa leaned against the sink, doubt creeping in. Was she risking too much? The scholarship, their financial stability, her future, all for what? A moment of recognition, a chance to show her true self. As these thoughts swirled, her phone buzzed with a text from Miss Porter. "Gym office is empty. 7th period, if you need a quiet place to focus. Keys under the mat." The small act of support steadied her. During 7th period, Janessa slipped into the gym office, locking the door behind her. She spread her uniform out to finish drying, then sat cross-legged on the floor, closing her eyes and focusing on her breathing. Her mind kept returning to the night before her first major tournament 3 years ago. Her father had sat beside her on their worn couch, sensing her nervousness. "Everyone feels fear, Jazz," he'd said. "The trick isn't getting rid of it. It's making it work for you instead of against you." "How?" she had asked. "By remembering who you are. Not who they say you are, who you know yourself to be." As the final bell rang, signaling the end of classes, Janessa opened her eyes. Her uniform was dry and her mind was clear. She carefully folded the dobok and belt, placing them back in her bag alongside her father's chain. Tonight, she would remember who she truly was. And so would everyone else. The Oakmont Academy Performing Arts Center gleamed under spotlights, a monument to privilege draped in the school's blue and gold colors. Luxury cars lined the circular drive as families arrived for the annual showcase. Women in designer dresses and men in tailored suits created a parade of wealth. Inside, the plush auditorium seats were filling with parents, alumni, and donors. The elite of the elite gathered to applaud their children's talents. Backstage, Janessa slipped through the chaos of performers preparing, keeping to the shadows. She clutched her backpack tightly, the weight of her uniform and belt inside grounding her against the rising tide of nerves. Finding an empty dressing room, she quickly changed. The familiar ritual of donning her dobok centered her mind and spirit. As she tied her belt with practiced precision, she took her father's gold chain and wrapped it around her wrist, securing it tightly. It wasn't traditional, but tonight wasn't about tradition alone. It was about bringing her whole self to the stage, honoring both her training and her history. The muffled sounds of the audience settling in vibrated through the walls. A production assistant with a clipboard knocked on her door. 10 minutes to curtain. All performers to the green room, please." Janessa nodded, taking one final look in the mirror. The person staring back seemed transformed, focused, powerful, unafraid. She made her way to the green room where other students gathered in cocktail dresses, formal wear, and performance costumes. Their chatter died down as she entered, the white uniform drawing every eye. Wendy stood at the center of the room in an elaborate dance costume, her face carefully made up to project confidence. But Janessa could see the slight tremor in her hands, the tension around her eyes. When Wendy spotted Janessa, confusion crossed her face, quickly replaced by dismissal. "Are you working the event or something?" Wendy asked, eyeing the uniform with disdain. Before Janessa could respond, the stage manager entered. "Everyone, check the board for your performance order. Wendy Carter, you're up 6th. Jay Turner, you're 14th. Wendy's head snapped toward Janessa, realization dawning. "You're Jay Turner? You entered the showcase?" Her incredulous laugh drew attention from others. "With what? Some kind of karate thing? This isn't a community center talent show." Janessa met her gaze calmly. "It's taekwondo, and I guess we'll see what the judges think." Wendy's face hardened. "My parents are the main sponsors. The judges know what's expected." She turned away, gathering her friends around her like armor. The showcase began with a classical piano piece performed by a senior whose family had donated the music wing. Polite applause followed, setting the pattern for the early performances. Technically proficient displays of privileged talents, violin solos, ballet routines, operatic vocals, each met with appropriate appreciation from the audience of parents and patrons. Janessa watched from the wings, noting the predictable rhythm of the evening. These performances weren't bad. Many represented years of expensive lessons and genuine effort, but they carried a certain sameness, lacking the hunger that drove her own practice. Wendy's turn came. She took the stage in a sprisal of expensive costume and professional lighting. Her contemporary dance routine was technically correct, clearly the work of a hired choreographer. But as Janessa watched, she could see the viral video inspiration in every movement. Wendy's face remained frozen in concentration, her gestures precise but mechanical. When she finished, the audience erupted in enthusiastic applause, led by a distinguished-looking couple in the front row. Wendy's parents, their smiles tight with expectation. More performances followed. Janessa's heart pounded harder with each passing act. When the stage manager finally signaled her, she closed her eyes briefly, remembering Master Price's words, "Perform for your father's memory. Perform for yourself." And now, the announcer's voice boomed, "Performing a taekwondo demonstration. Please welcome Jay Turner." A murmur of confusion rippled through the audience as Janessa walked onto the stage, bare feet silent against the polished wood. The spotlights felt like fire on her skin, hundreds of eyes boring into her. She caught glimpses of Wendy and her friends in the wings, smirking in anticipation of failure. In the front row, Wendy's father leaned over to whisper something to the woman beside him, both frowning at the program. Janessa took her position at center stage, closed her eyes, and bowed deeply. To the audience. To her father's memory. To herself. The sound system began playing the music she had selected, a haunting fusion of traditional Korean drumming and contemporary bass that vibrated through the floorboards and into her bones. She began with traditional pumse forms, her movements crisp and precise, each stance a perfect demonstration of balance and control. The audience watched in confused silence at first, uncertain what to make of this unfamiliar art form. But as Janessa moved deeper into her routine, the physical poetry of her discipline began to register. The whispers faded, the shuffling stopped. Transitioning from traditional forms, she incorporated dynamic breaking techniques, her foot slicing through boards held by suddenly appearing assistants, students from Master Price's dojang who had agreed to help. Each powerful break was punctuated by the sharp crack of splintering wood, making several audience members jump in their seats. The contrast between her controlled grace and explosive power created a mesmerizing rhythm. The routine built in intensity as Janessa incorporated acrobatic elements, aerial kicks and spins that seemed to defy gravity. Her body told the story, her words never could, of struggle and resilience, of invisible battles fought daily, of power concealed but never diminished. The father's chain glinted around her wrist as she moved, catching the light with each technique. In the front row, Wendy's parents had stopped whispering, their attention completely captured. In the wings, Wendy herself stood frozen, all pretense of disinterest abandoned, as she watched with undisguised shock. For the finale, Janessa invited 3 volunteers from the audience, senior boys from the basketball team who had stepped forward eagerly. She positioned them side by side, instructed them to hold their arms at shoulder height, creating a human barrier nearly 6 feet tall. Taking her mark 15 feet away, Janessa centered herself. The auditorium fell absolutely silent. She sprinted forward, gathering momentum, then launched into a spectacular flying kick that soared over all 3 volunteers, her body horizontal to the ground at the apex before landing silently on the other side. The audience gasped collectively, then burst into spontaneous applause before she had even completed her final sequence. The applause grew as Janessa finished with a deeply personal movement, unwrapping her father's chain from her wrist and kissing it before holding it skyward in a gesture of tribute. Then she bowed once more, deeply and with perfect form, her heart pounding but her breathing controlled. The silence that followed lasted only a heartbeat before the audience erupted. First, one person stood, then another, until the entire auditorium was on its feet. The ovation thundered through the space, drowning out Wendy's father's attempts to quiet the enthusiasm. Students who had never spoken to Janessa were cheering wildly, some recording on their phones, others simply staring in disbelief. As Janessa left the stage, she passed Wendy, whose perfect makeup couldn't hide her stunned expression. For the first time since they'd met, Wendy had nothing to say. The remaining performances proceeded in Janessa's wake, but the energy in the room had fundamentally shifted. Nothing that followed could recapture the audience's attention the same way. When the final act concluded, the head judge took the stage to announce the winners. Third place goes to Michael Clark for his violin concerto. Polite applause followed as Michael accepted his certificate and small trophy. Second place, the judge continued, glancing nervously toward Wendy's parents, goes to Wendy Carter for her contemporary dance. Wendy's face flushed as she accepted her award, her smile brittle under the spotlights. Her parents' applause seemed mechanical, disappointment evident in their rigid posture. And first place, with the $2,500 prize, the judge announced, genuine enthusiasm breaking through his professional demeanor, goes to Janessa Turner for her extraordinary Taekwondo demonstration. The auditorium exploded once more, students standing on seats and whistling as Janessa returned to the stage. The judge handed her an envelope containing the check and a gleaming trophy that caught the stage lights. Wendy's father remained seated, his expression thunderous, while his wife clapped with visible reluctance. But Janessa barely noticed them. In that moment, standing under the lights with proof of her victory in hand, she felt her father's presence more strongly than she had in years. She had done it, not just won the prize, but shown her true self to a world that had refused to see her. As she left the stage, trophy in hand, she knew the hardest part was still to come. Tomorrow's meeting with the headmaster would determine whether this victory was a beginning or an end. The backstage area buzzed with excitement as performers and audience members mingled after the showcase. Students who had never acknowledged Janessa's existence now approached with congratulations and questions, their sudden interest both flattering and suspect. She answered politely but briefly, eager to return home and share the news with Grandma Rose. As she gathered her belongings in the dressing room, the door burst open. Wendy stood in the doorway, her face flushed with anger beneath her perfect makeup. "You planned this," she accused, voice trembling. "You deliberately humiliated me in front of everyone." Janessa carefully folded her uniform. "I entered a competition and performed to the best of my ability, just like you did." "Don't pretend this was fair," Wendy hissed, stepping closer. "My parents have sponsored this showcase for years. I was supposed to win." "Maybe you should have practiced an original routine instead of copying one from a viral video," Janessa replied quietly. Wendy's eyes widened. "You! How did you?" "I heard you in the locker room. Your secret was never really secret, Wendy. You just assumed no one was paying attention to you unless you wanted them to." Wendy's face contorted with rage. She glanced around to ensure they were alone, then moved with surprising speed, shoving Janessa hard against the wall. "You have no idea who you're messing with. My father can make one call and your precious scholarship disappears." The old fear flickered briefly in Janessa's chest, then vanished. With a simple redirection technique, she sidestepped Wendy's aggressive stance, causing the other girl to stumble but not fall. The movement was so effortless it appeared almost accidental. "Don't touch me again," Janessa said, her voice level but carrying an unmistakable warning. What neither of them realized was that the door had remained partially open. 3 students had witnessed the confrontation, phones raised to record what they'd assumed would be a dramatic post-show argument. Within minutes, the video of Wendy's threat and Janessa's controlled response was circulating on school's social media channels, accompanied by comments ranging from shocked to supportive. By the time Janessa arrived home, clutching her trophy and prize check, the video had been viewed by half the student body. Grandma Rose was waiting up despite the late hour, and her eyes filled with tears of pride as Janessa recounted the evening. "Your daddy is looking down and smiling tonight," she said, holding the trophy with reverent hands. "And this money, Janessa, this changes everything." And they stayed up late calculating exactly how the $2,500 would be allocated. $2,000 for the championship registration, the remainder toward Grandma's medical bills. They would still need to be careful with money, but the immediate crisis was averted. "What about tomorrow?" Grandma Rose asked finally, referring to the scholarship review meeting. "After tonight, do you think they'll still try to take it away?" Janessa thought about the video now circulating, about Miss Porter, who had texted her congratulations, about the students who had witnessed her victory. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I'm not afraid anymore." She slept deeply that night, the exhaustion of weeks finally catching up with her. When her alarm rang the next morning, she dressed with care in her neatest school uniform, the weight of uncertainty balanced by a new sense of confidence. The Oakmont campus felt different as she walked through the gates. Students nodded or smiled as she passed. Some even called her by name. The video had continued spreading overnight, with new comments from alumni and parents questioning Wendy's behavior and praising Janessa's restraint. Outside Headmaster Wilson's office, Miss Porter was waiting. "Quite a night," the PE teacher said with a small smile. "For what it's worth, I made sure Wilson saw the video before your meeting." Before Janessa could respond, the office door opened and the headmaster beckoned her inside. To her surprise, Miss Barnes was also present, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Miss Turner," Headmaster Wilson began, his expression unreadable. "Your scholarship review was scheduled some time ago as a routine matter, but recent events have added some complexity to our discussion." Janessa sat perfectly straight, channeling the same focus she brought to her taekwondo practice. "Yes, sir. Your academic record is exemplary," he continued, reviewing a file on his desk. "Top of your class in mathematics and science, excellent grades across all subjects. From an academic standpoint, there has never been any question about your qualification for the scholarship." He paused, removing his glasses. "However, Miss Barnes had raised concerns about your cultural fit at Oakmont." Miss Barnes shifted in her chair, but said nothing. "I believe," the headmaster continued, "those concerns have been thoroughly addressed by your performance last night, which demonstrated exceptional discipline and talent. Moreover, certain videos brought to my attention this morning raised serious questions about the treatment you've received from some of our legacy students." He replaced his glasses, his tone becoming more formal. "Oakmont Academy was founded on principles of excellence and character. While we value our traditional community, we cannot condone behavior that undermines those principles, regardless of a family's donation history." Janessa realized with a jolt what was happening. This wasn't about revoking her scholarship at all. "Your scholarship will continue, Miss Turner," Headmaster Wilson confirmed. "Additionally, the board has asked me to review our harassment policies and implementation. Miss Barnes will be heading that initiative." "Me." He gave the guidance counselor a pointed look that suggested this was not a request. "Thank you, sir," Janessa said, relief washing through her. As she left the office, she found a small crowd of students waiting, including several who had witnessed her showcase performance. Among them was Tyler, Wendy's boyfriend, and the captain of the lacrosse team. "That was incredible last night," he said, genuine admiration in his voice. "Some of us were wondering if you'd consider teaching a few basic moves, like a club or something." The request was so unexpected that Janessa laughed. "You want to learn taekwondo from me? Why not?" A girl she recognized from chemistry class chimed in. "You're obviously amazing at it." Later that day, Janessa received an email from the Oakmont administration approving the formation of a martial arts club with Miss Porter as faculty sponsor and Janessa as student leader. Another email arrived from the national championship organizers, confirming her registration and participant number. Wendy was noticeably absent from school that day, but the following week she returned, subdued, and avoiding Janessa's path. Her parents' influence ensured there were no official consequences for her behavior, but the social dynamic had shifted irrevocably. The video had exposed not just her actions, but the system that had protected her for so long. One afternoon, several weeks later, Wendy approached Janessa alone in the library. "My parents are making me apologize," she said stiffly. "They're worried about their reputation." "Is that all you're worried about?" Janessa asked. Wendy hesitated, something vulnerable flickering across her face. "They've never seen me fail before. Now it's all they see when they look at me." Despite everything, Janessa felt a twinge of empathy. Living under impossible expectations was something she understood all too well. "Maybe it's not about failing or succeeding," she suggested. "Maybe it's about being real." Wendy didn't respond, but as she walked away, her shoulders seemed less rigid than before. The national championship arrived in early summer. Janessa didn't win. She placed third, earning a smaller scholarship that would supplement her academic ones for college. But standing on the podium, seeing Grandma Rose cheering in the audience alongside Miss Porter and several Oakmont classmates who had made the trip to support her, she felt something more valuable than victory. When school resumed in the fall, Janessa found herself no longer invisible. The martial arts club had grown to 20 members, including students from all social circles. The administration had implemented new anti-harassment policies with actual consequences. And while the change wasn't perfect, it was progress. On a crisp October evening, Janessa stood in Master Price's dojang, guiding a group of younger children through basic forms. Among them was a shy 7-year-old girl, whose mother couldn't afford regular lessons. Janessa had used a portion of her championship prize to create a small scholarship fund for kids like her. "Remember," she told them as they practiced, "Taekwondo isn't just about fighting. It's about knowing your own strength, even when others don't see it yet." Outside the window, autumn leaves danced in the wind, gold and crimson against the darkening sky. Janessa watched her young students' determined faces and felt the circle complete itself. From her father's guidance to her own journey, to these children just beginning to discover their power. Some walls weren't meant to be accepted. They were meant to be transformed, not by force, but by the quiet, persistent courage to show the world your true self again and again until it finally sees you. The autumn winds carried a crisp bite as Janessa crossed the courtyard of Oakmont Academy, her martial arts bag slung over one shoulder. Weeks had passed since the showcase that had transformed her from an invisible scholarship student into a name whispered with respect. Time had softened the frenzy of viral videos and cafeteria gossip, but the quiet ripple of change remained in every corner of the campus. Students who once sneered now held doors open. Teachers who had overlooked her raised eyebrows at her thoughtful answers in class. Even the carved marble columns of the academy seemed less foreboding, less like walls designed to keep her out, and more like arches she had passed through and claimed as her own. But Janessa knew better than to believe change was simple. Respect, she had learned, could vanish as quickly as applause, and prejudice did not disappear overnight. Still, as she walked, she carried herself differently now, straighter, steadier, unafraid of the stares that followed. At the edge of the courtyard, Wendy Carter stood with her usual entourage, though their circle looked thinner these days. Janessa braced for a jab, a smirk, some barbed remark meant to remind her of her place. But Wendy only glanced up, her gaze catching Janessa's for the briefest of moments. What passed between them was not friendship nor forgiveness, but something quieter. Recognition. An acknowledgement that the old balance of power was gone, and in its place stood a new reality. Wendy looked away first, her voice subdued as she returned to her friends. Later that afternoon, Janessa unlocked the door to apartment 3B. The familiar scent of lemon cleaner greeted her, but this time it mingled with the warm aroma of chicken simmering on the stove. "Early today?" Janessa asked, setting her bag down. Grandma Rose emerged from the kitchen, her steps slower but her cheeks brighter than they had been weeks ago. "Doctor says the pneumonia's clear," she announced, though her voice carried the cautious tone of someone who had fought too many battles to celebrate too loudly. Janessa smiled, relief loosening the knot in her chest. She pulled out her latest report card, pristine as always, and placed it on the table. Straight A's again. Grandma Rose studied the paper, her eyes shining. "Your daddy would be so proud. I just wish he could see." She trailed off, her voice breaking. Janessa reached across the table and covered her grandmother's hand with her own. "He does see," Janessa whispered. The gold chain wrapped around her wrist glinted faintly, as if in agreement. As winter approached, the martial arts club grew stronger. What began with hesitant volunteers, Tyler from lacrosse, the girl from chemistry class, a handful of others curious about that karate thing, had expanded into a group of 25 students. The practice mats borrowed from the PE department were worn thin from their training sessions, but the energy in the room was unshakable. "Again," Janessa commanded one afternoon, her voice firm but encouraging. She watched as the group stumbled through a basic kick sequence, half of them falling out of rhythm. She laughed lightly. "Don't think about getting it perfect yet. Think about control, about strength you can feel inside, not just what shows outside." The students tried again, this time more focused. Miss Porter observed from the corner, arms crossed, nodding in approval. "You've got the makings of a coach," she told Janessa afterward. Janessa shrugged, though pride flickered in her chest. "I just want them to feel what Taekwondo gave me, that you can be strong, even when the world tells you you're weak." The national championship had ended with Janessa in third place, but the trophy on her shelf gleamed like gold nonetheless. The scholarship money, though smaller than first place, eased the burden of college applications. Letters had begun arriving. Universities she once only dreamed of now wanted her. Some referenced her academic record, others had seen the viral videos and spoke of diversity grants, leadership initiatives, or athletic opportunities. Each letter felt like a door opening where once only walls had stood. One evening, Janessa sat at her desk. Application forms spread before her. Her grandmother dozed on the couch, the soft hum of the television filling the silence. Janessa tapped the end of her pen against the table, overwhelmed not by the fear of rejection, but by the abundance of possibility. For years, her life had been a series of limitations. Now, for the first time, the horizon felt wide open. She picked up the letter from Columbia University, one of her father's old dreams. He had once joked that she'd walk those ivy-covered halls while he bragged about her to every stranger he met. The ache in her chest softened into determination. She began filling out the application, whispering softly, "This one's for you, Dad." Spring came, painting the city in bursts of green. On Saturday mornings, Janessa began teaching free martial arts classes at the community center. Children from the neighborhood, some shy, some brimming with restless energy, filled the mats. Among them was the little girl she had noticed before, 7 years old, with eyes too old for her age. "Step here," Janessa guided, adjusting the girl's stance. "Good. Feel your balance? That's yours. No one can take it away." "Zhu." The girl nodded shyly, repeating the move with growing confidence. Janessa stepped back, watching the line of children practicing kicks, their voices echoing through the center. It reminded her of her own childhood, of a father who had knelt beside her, saying the same words she now passed on. When the class ended, one of the parents approached Janessa, pressing an envelope into her hand. "For the lessons," the woman insisted. Janessa shook her head gently. "It's free. Use it for her school supplies." The woman looked stunned, then grateful. Janessa slipped the envelope into the scholarship jar she kept at the front desk, the fund she'd started with part of her showcase prize. One day, it might grow into something bigger. On the eve of summer break, Oakmont Academy held its annual assembly. The headmaster gave his usual speech about tradition, excellence, and legacy. But this year, when he spoke of character, his eyes lingered on Janessa in the audience. Around her, whispers buzzed. Some students still resented her presence, but others clapped openly when her name was mentioned. Afterward, as the crowd dispersed, Janessa walked the marble halls that had once felt like a prison. She paused beneath the towering portraits of alumni, men and women whose names were etched into Oakmont history. For the first time, she wondered if her name might one day join them, not because of wealth or family, but because she had fought to belong. She smiled faintly, adjusting the strap of her bag. Let them remember me, she thought, but let them remember me for who I really am. That night, Janessa stood on the balcony of apartment 3B. The city spread before her in a wash of lights. Grandma Rose had gone to bed early, exhausted from her shift. The air smelled of rain and asphalt, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Janessa leaned against the railing, clutching her father's chain in her palm. The memory of the showcase, the roar of the crowd, the sting of Wendy's words, the relief of the scholarship meeting, all of it swirled through her mind like fragments of a storm that had finally passed. Yet she knew storms would come again. College, competitions, the endless push against a world that still judged too quickly and too harshly. But she was no longer the girl who trembled in the cafeteria, clutching ruined notes. She was stronger now, rooted, unbreakable. The wind tugged at her hair as she closed her eyes, hearing her father's voice in the hush of the night. "Show them who you are." "I will," she whispered, again and again until they finally see. And with that, Janessa stepped back inside, ready for whatever the next chapter would bring. In the end, Janessa's journey was never only about a trophy, a scholarship, or even a single act of defiance in a glittering auditorium. It was about a girl who discovered that her true strength was not measured in medals or applause, but in the quiet resilience to rise when the world told her to kneel. We often imagine courage as a single, explosive act, the punch thrown, the shout in the silence, the leap across a stage. But Janessa's story reminds us that real courage is quieter, more persistent. It lives in the discipline of showing up when no one is watching, in the choice to stay standing when humiliation or hatred tries to break you down. It is the courage to be seen for who you are, even when being seen feels dangerous. And in Janessa's defiance, there is a lesson for all of us. Because while she stood alone in that cafeteria, or bowed under the stage lights, her fight was never truly just her own. Her fight was the fight of every student who has been told they don't belong, of every child carrying the weight of poverty, of every young person underestimated because of the color of their skin, the balance of their bank account, or the accent in their voice. She fought not only with fists and flawless forms, but with the audacity to exist fully in a space designed to erase her. And that is a kind of power no scholarship committee, no wealthy donor, and no bully can take away. It's tempting to end here, to leave Janessa frozen in triumph, her father's chain glinting under the lights, her grandmother smiling in the shadows. But the story doesn't really end there, because Janessa's victory isn't just hers, it belongs to us, too. It belongs to everyone who dares to remember that silence protects the system, but courage rewrites it. So what will you do with her story? Will you walk past injustice in your own hallways, or will you pause, even for a moment, and speak up? Will you allow fear to press your shoulders down, or will you, like Janessa, let that fear sharpen your stance and lift your chin? Perhaps your battles don't look like hers. Maybe they unfold not under the harsh lights of a stage, but in classrooms, workplaces, families, or even the quiet corners of your own mind. Yet the lesson remains the same. Your strength, your voice, your trows, your story matters. And when you step into the world refusing to hide it, you give others permission to do the same. Here at Raw Black Stories, we believe in the power of tales like Janessa's, not polished fantasies, but raw, unflinching journeys of struggle and triumph that remind us of who we are and who we might yet become. If this story stirred something in you, a memory, a wound, a sprice of courage, don't let it fade. Share your thoughts. Tell us what part of Janessa's journey spoke to you, or what walls you yourself are ready to transform. And if you believe the world needs more stories like this one, stories that honor the unseen battles and the quiet victories, then stay with us. Join this community, because Janessa's story is only one among many. And tomorrow, another underdog will step into the light. The choice is yours. Watch from the sidelines, or walk with us into the stories that matter.